Hello, I am Xarkun and this is World of Warships Legends. Today we're going to talk about the Tier 7 Italian tech tree battleship, the Vittorio Veneto, which I think is a great ship. It's certainly the pinnacle of this new tech tree line, and I'm just going to give you the basic overview of this ship. If you're familiar with the premium Tier 7 Italian battleship Roma, then this is basically more of the same. It's got the same sort of gun setup with 9 15-inch guns. It's got the same sort of armor, and most of the characteristics generally across the board are the same. In fact, I think the hulls are pretty much identical. The key differences are in its consumables, of course, and its secondaries. In my opinion, this ship is a much better version of the Roma, and I can't imagine why you would want to play the Roma if you have this thing in your port. Because to begin with, in terms of its consumables, it comes with the exhaust smokescreen generator that is common to the Italian battleships starting at Tier 6 with the Francesco Caracciolo, and, of course, the Italian cruisers. And more than that, it comes with semi-armor piercing secondaries. There's a large number of 90mm secondaries and a few 152mm secondaries. And I'm here to tell you that these secondaries, at least in my view, are the best secondaries in this entire game. I don't think any other secondaries can hold a candle to these things. Not on the Massachusetts, the Bismarck, the Brandenburg, any of the battleships that you might have previously associated as secondary battleships. This thing trumps them all. And why is that? Well, we're going to see some examples of these secondaries in action. Even though I say they're the best secondaries in the game, in my opinion, they do have one thing that is sort of holding them back, I suppose you could say, and that thing is their limited range. Now, I have Paolo di Revel as the commander on my ship. I've got the Porcupine skill selected, and Revel is at rank 16, so the Porcupine skill is maxed out. And then plus I have Hipper and Haruna, both of which are also at rank 16, inspiring the build. And the secondary module in, the first slot, I think. All these things combined together make the secondaries reach out to 7.8 kilometers. And now that's a far cry from the 10 to 11 kilometers you can get with the secondaries on, say, the Massachusetts or the Brandenburg. The range is much shorter, which means you have to get in a lot closer to make these things work. But when you do, they consistently do damage when they hit. The damage that they do also is greater, I believe, than the damage that the secondaries on the German battleships or the one American battleship are going to do. And that is because semi-armor piercing as a shell type has, by and large, a higher alpha strike than high explosive, so that's one factor there. But the other factor is that the semi-armor piercing has both more penetration than high explosive of the same caliber, and it also sort of doesn't care about armor angles the same way high explosive does. For example, the 90mm secondaries on this ship, if they shot high explosive, would not even be capable of penetrating the hulls of same-tier destroyers. But since they shoot armor piercing, I believe they penetrate up to 32 millimeters of armor, and that's just on the 90mm secondaries. On the 152s, they pen upwards of 40 millimeters of armor. So if you ever go into the armor viewer and look at any battleship or cruiser, you'll find that not a lot of ships have more armor in very sort of hittable places by the secondaries. So these secondaries pen so much. You can see them penetrating the Iowa almost every time they hit. The only time they're not going to penetrate is if they hit something very thickly armored, like, say, the Iowa's turrets or his Citadel belt, or if they hit the armor at an angle that sap can't penetrate, because sap can ricochet on certain angles. I think they have to be very tight angles, like, say, 15, 14 degrees, something like that. So these secondaries, when they are in range, do a monstrous amount of damage. Not always to battleships. I mean, you can see they're hitting the Iowa very nicely out there. In fact, I'm not even going to shoot at the Iowa again with my main guns because I was hoping these secondaries would actually take him out. They looked like they were going to. Spoiler alert, they don't end up quite taking him out, so I probably should have shot at him. But if you're having these secondaries firing at, say, a German or a Russian or even another Italian battleship, those ships all tend to have very thick side armor and belt plating and the like, and so the sap is probably not going to penetrate those, but it can of course still penetrate the superstructure, probably the bow armor since it's 32 millimeters, things like that. Essentially, these secondaries will shred, and this is to say nothing of cruisers, especially more lightly armored cruisers, and destroyers, where if the sap hits those things, then it's probably going to penetrate almost everywhere, and it's absolutely going to eat them alive. I was playing a game that isn't this game you're watching before you, with the Veneto, and I came up against a Cleveland who was in my secondary range, and I watched these secondaries do 11,000 damage to that Cleveland in the span of maybe 20 or 30 seconds. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. I don't think any other secondary battleship is capable of doing the kind of damage that these sap secondaries do. So they're the best in the game, at least in my opinion. And then you've got this rolling smoke screen, which of course offers you a bunch of unique ways to disengage if things get too sticky. You could deploy that smoke screen if you wanted to make a turn, say you're pushing into maybe too many ships, and you realize it too late, and you think, oh, I can't continue to push in, or I'm going to get sunk. Well, you can stop firing your guns, you can deploy one of those smoke screens, and you can turn broadside in front of all the enemy ships and maneuver in such a way that you can begin kiting away to save yourself from pushing in and being destroyed. That's another nice thing. You can also get really close to an enemy ship and use the smoke screen while not firing your main guns to remain concealed within it and let your secondaries do the talking. The possibilities are out there and they are endless. As far as the main guns on this ship, well, to be honest with you, I really, really wish Wargaming would add a detailed statistics screen at the end of every battle that would break down your damage output by armament type, because I would love to see how much damage my secondaries did in this game compared to the main guns. I expect that in this game the secondaries did quite a bit of damage. Now the main guns, on the other hand, are extremely inaccurate and unreliable. This might be a problem for some of you, but it's not a problem to me, not with the kind of damage output these secondaries are able to produce. Also, I kind of wonder whether this ship sort of has a cheek citadel weakness like the Yamato and some other battleships out there, because you saw that shot that the Amagi just took at us. I believe that was a citadel, and we were angled, so that may be something to pay attention to. You might not want to present this kind of angle if you're pushing into a battleship. It may be better to just go bow on, and unfortunately we are taken out there. But we end up doing 150,000 damage with a combination of our secondaries and our main guns, and in fact we get 363 secondary hits, the majority of which I think probably did damage. So this is an excellent ship in my mind. As far as which commander I'd recommend, I would of course recommend Revel because of the Master Mechanic skill and the Porcupine skill. I think you want to buff the secondaries, and I think everything about the design process of these Italian battleships suggest that they are designed to push in. That's why they've got more heals, a total of 6 if you use Master Mechanic, than any other battleship, and that's why they have the sap, secondaries, and the smoke screen. All of this combines together to make these very, very effective brawlers, and as a consequence, in my opinion, they're some of the most fun battleships in the game. Let me know what you think of this ship and my take on it in the comments section. Give the video a thumbs up, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. With that, I will see you next time. Goodbye.